When I left the 42nd floor of the Goldman Sachs Tower, nobody asked why. No one chased after me. They just watched me walk away like I'd lost my mind. My name is Ellie Tran. And depending on who you ask, I either burned down a brilliant future or finally started living my own. I used to wear power suits that cost more than my current rent. I flew business class to pitch meetings and knew the sommelier by name at half the steakhouses in Midtown. My inbox never slept. Neither did I. And I was good at it. Fast-tracked. Respected. Promising. Until the day I realized I was succeeding at everything except being myself. That day, I stood up during a partners meeting. I left my badge gold lettering and all on the table and walked out. No plan. No applause. Just a strange relief in my lungs, like I'd finally stopped holding my breath. To my parents, it wasn't bravery. It was betrayal. Maybe you've felt it too, that strange in-between space where success feels loud, but your heart stays quiet, where everyone's cheering, but you're still searching. If this story speaks to something inside you, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment, or just tell me how it made you feel. This is Silent Revenge, a place for quiet victories and loud hearts. And if you'd like to walk with us a little further, feel free to subscribe. Gently. No pressure. The elevator doors opened with a whisper. And just like that, I was back. Back in the apartment where everything had to look perfect, even if nothing ever felt that way. The floors were still polished marble. Cold underfoot like the tone in my father's voice. The same Art Deco chandelier sparkled above the same designer furniture that no one ever really sat in. And the air, God. The air still smelled like imported lilac. It diffused just right to impress guests who barely noticed. Except tonight, there were no guests. Just blood, and tension, and strategy. Masked as concern, I stepped into the living room like a defendant summoned before a jury. My father stood by the fireplace, arms crossed like he was preparing for a boardroom takedown. My mother sat stiffly at the edge of a cream chaise lounge, posture so perfect it looked painful. And Nathan Trinale, celebrity plastic surgeon, lounged with a scotch in hand. His smirk already loaded. "You're late," my mother said, voice sharp with sugar. "By 2 minutes." I replied, placing the brown paper box gently on the glass table. "No one's bleeding." "I hope." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Professionalism's not optional. Even for, what do we call it now? Mud Shaper's ceramic artist?" I corrected. "Calm. Controlled. Cute." He shrugged. "Tomato." "Tomato." My father didn't bother with sarcasm. "Let's not waste time," he said. "We're concerned." There it was. I took the only unoccupied chair narrow, hard-backed, facing all three of them like it was designed for interrogation. "You've been struggling," my mother began, choosing her words like walking a minefield. "We know the artist thing is challenging," Nathan chimed in, sounding like a pharmaceutical ad. Quitting Goldman was emotional, understandable in college. "Not at initiative." "You had everything," my father added. His tone clipped. "Security? Structure. You gave it up for a garage full of clay." I didn't flinch, just looked at each of them. They'd probably cleared their calendars for this canceled dinners. I rescheduled surgeries all to save me from a life I no longer wanted. "We reached out to some of your old contacts," my father went on. "Your boss at Goldman said the door's open. You can go back. Still salvageable," Nathan added, lifting his glass. "If you don't wait too long." I leaned back slightly. "Let the pause bloom." "This face," I said quietly, doesn't need saving. They thought I came here to argue, to justify, to beg for approval, but I didn't bring explanations. I brought proof. I stood slowly and lifted the lid off the box I'd carried in. Inside, nestled in recycled paper and care, was a vase hand-thrown, mid-century silhouette, glazed in tones that shifted like breath depending on the light. "This," I said softly, "is being featured next month at the Met?" At first, no one moved. The vase sat there under the chandelier like a question they didn't know how to answer. Its surface shimmered between metallic and matte, bronze and ash alive, in a way none of us were saying out loud. "It's part of a collaboration with Casa Ferretti," I added. "My design, my name, my mark under the glaze." Nathan was the first to speak. "Impossible," he said, half laughing. "You're not even well-known, not rich, not connected, not important enough." I finished for him. "Yeah, I know." I pulled out my phone. One tap, the screen lit up. The Met's press release. Hot off the wire. "The Metropolitan Museum of Art and Casa Ferretti Present New Earth. The Ceramics of Ellie Tran. An exhibition exploring sustainability, culture, and feminine strength through modern clay." My dad's phone buzzed first. Then Nathan's. Then my mom's. I watched the transformation creep across their faces like fog slowly clearing from a mirror. Not instant, not dramatic, but steady. I could see it now, the dawning realization that they had no idea who I had become. "I've sold out every limited run for the past year," I said quietly. "We just signed a licensing deal for a home goods line. Vogue Italy next week. Forbes next month." Silence. No applause. No congratulations. Which was fine. That's not why I came. "I'm not here for validation," I said, picking up the box again. "Just thought you should see what failure looks like by your standards." I turned to leave. Behind me, my mother whispered, "But it's just pottery." I didn't turn around. "No," I said. "It's art. It's business. It's impact. And it's mine." The elevator doors slid shut behind me, like a curtain falling on the final act. But this wasn't the end. It was never about revenge. It wasn't even about proving them wrong. It was about being seen not as a disappointment, not as a dropout, but as someone real, someone whole. The ride down was quiet. Just the soft, mechanical hum beneath my feet and the steady rhythm in my chest. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. For the first time in years, there was no urge to defend or explain, no need to perform my worth. I had said what needed to be said, and more importantly, what needed to be shown. As I stepped into the lobby, the marble floor cool under my boots, my phone buzzed. Right on time. 8:00 p.m. The Met's Instagram post had just gone live. Introducing New Earth. A limited-time ceramic exhibit by Ellie Tran. A collaboration with Casa Ferretti where ancient craft meets modern sustainability. I opened the app. There it was, a photo of my hand's clay still on the skin, gently placing the vase on a wooden pedestal. No face. No filter. Just truth. The likes were already climbing. Comments rolling in. Hearts and fire emojis and words like powerful, haunting, elevating. I smiled. Not because I wanted their praise, but because the world was finally catching up. The black car waited at the curb like something out of a film, sleek, silent, with the kind of presence you can't ignore. The driver opened the door and said nothing. He didn't need to. He knew my name. And tonight, so did the city. We drove through Manhattan, like a whisper sliding through a crowd. Above us, buildings gleamed. Below. My phone pulsed with notifications, every one of them proof. Proof that I hadn't disappeared. I'd only been busy building something no one saw coming. The gallery in Tribeca was already glowing when I arrived. Soft amber lights spilled onto the sidewalk. People in structured suits and undone collars milled around the entrance, whispering names like they were secrets. Inside, the air hummed with wealth and curiosity. I didn't flinch. I walked in like it was mine because it was. The PR director met me near the staircase. iPad in hand, cheeks flushed. "Vogue's here," she said. Architectural Digest. 2. Oh, and artsy. I nodded. They know what they're looking at, they do now. She smiled. At the center of the room, beneath a canopy of soft lighting, stood my work. 13 pieces, each one a chapter. Clay shaped by hands no one thought could build an empire. Years of trial and fire, now dressed in silk and cameras. The glazes alive under light flickered with purpose. Not polish. Story. Soul. Grit. Ava appeared beside me. Phone in hand. Voice lowered. "You're trending. Number 6 in New York on X." She turned the screen toward me. Vogue had posted a clip one of Ferretti's models walking through the Met, holding my vase like a handbag. The caption, "A new kind of artist, a new kind of legacy." I looked at the screen for a moment, then put it away. Let them call it art now. Let them realize this was never a phase. Across the room, I caught a glimpse of someone I didn't expect, Nathan. My brother. Alone. No scotch. No smirk. He stood by the wall, staring at one of the larger pieces like it was some kind of mirror. I walked toward him slowly. Traded the whiskey for a little humility, I asked gently. He looked up. Startled, then different. Softer. Maybe even real? "You weren't just making pots," he said quietly. "You were building something." I smiled. "Just a little. That's the thing about clay," I said. "It only hardens after pressure. And fire." He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't wait. Let them catch up in their own time. I had more pieces to greet, and more of myself to reclaim. Sometimes it takes fire and time to be seen clearly. If any part of this story reminded you of your own quiet fight, I'd really love to hear it. Where are you watching from tonight? What are you building? Silently. That no one sees yet. This is Silent Revenge, where we honor what grows in silence. If the story stayed with you, maybe stay a little longer with us. A gentle subscribe is all it takes. And we're just getting started. The next chapter holds more than they ever expected. He stood near the far wall. Alone. No entourage. No curated posture. Just Nathan. Cute. Still. His eyes were fixed on one of the centerpiece vases, the tallest one in the collection. The one with the ash glaze that cracked just slightly at the base, like the earth splitting open to speak. I didn't approach right away. I watched him. This was the brother who once laughed when I brought home a handmade mug, who called it adorable, then said I should sell it on Etsy like the other failed finance majors. But tonight, he wasn't laughing. I finally walked over, slow and calm, a little tired from all the cameras. The congratulations, the curated admiration. Didn't expect to see you here, I said. He didn't turn right away. I didn't come to criticize, he answered. I came to understand. That caught me off guard. Understand what I asked. How someone builds this. From what looked like failure. I let out a slow breath. That's the thing about clay, I said. It looks like a mess for a long time. Until it doesn't. He nodded. Eyes still on the piece. You weren't rebelling. Were you? He murmured. You were building something real. I gave a small shrug. I was tired of being who everyone else needed me to be. For a second, he looked like he might say something else. Maybe an apology. Maybe not. But then his phone buzzed. A pause. A glance at the screen. His wife had posted something. I could tell by his jaw tightening he didn't approve. Didn't know. Or didn't expect it to blow up that fast. I didn't ask. Just turned slightly. Let him stew in his own recognition. Let them all sit with the new math that I didn't succeed despite them. I succeeded without them. And that changes everything. The day I walked away from Wall Street, I didn't have a business plan. I had lungs that felt like they were on fire, and a scream that refused to leave my throat. I took my last bonus and found a tiny walk-up in Williamsburg, then leased the back half of an old print shop from a woman who didn't ask questions. I bought my first pottery wheel off Craigslist. The motor wheezed like a dying lawnmower, and still I started. The first 6 months were brutal. Bowls collapsed mid-spin. Glazes ran off like rain. Pieces cracked. Exploded. Shattered in the kiln. Some days. So did I. Me fingers blew. My wrists ached. I worked through blackouts in summer. Frostbite in winter. There were nights I sat in the dark next to a broken kiln. I'm wondering if I'd just ruined my life. But I kept going. Not out of courage. Out of stubbornness. Because every time I thought of quitting, I saw Nathan's face the way he laughed when I handed him that first misshapen mug. Cute, he'd said. Maybe try Etsy. So I stayed and learned. I filled notebooks with glaze tests. I studied kiln temperatures like they were sacred. I mixed Japanese wood ash with local clay. Then salt water with seaweed to mimic coastal erosion. I failed. A lot. But somewhere in the silence, people began to notice. It started with a single post. A niche design blogger someone I didn't know. I had never met. Bought a bowl from my Etsy store. She posted a photo of it in her West Village apartment, one-line caption. Elegance from Earth. Didn't know clay could feel this couture. That photo was shared by a design director at Casa Ferretti USA. 3 weeks later, I was in a glass-walled conference room in Soho, presenting prototypes to a man in velvet loafers, holding a teacup poodle in a leather sling. He didn't say much, just tapped the rim of one of my test pieces with a perfectly manicured finger and said, This is not pottery. This is rebellion. I didn't flinch. They offered me a collaboration on the spot. I negotiated hard ownership of my IP. Sustainability mandates. Profit share. I even demanded final control over packaging. They said yes. The lawyer who reviewed the contracts was an old classmate from Wharton. She stared at my name on the paperwork and said, Wait. You're that Ellie Tran, I thought you vanished. I smiled. No. I said, I just built something off the map. Back in Brooklyn. Nothing changed, not on the outside. I still swept my studio myself. Still packed every order by hand. Still signed each piece. Numbered them. Imperfect and real. But behind the clay, I was no longer just an artist. I was a registered corp. A certified minority woman-owned business. I had filed 2 provisional patents, one for my eco-firing process, another for a volcanic ash binding glaze. I hired a team of 4, signed distribution deals with Nordic furniture retailers, got invited to speak at the Design Miami Summit. But my family, they still thought I was selling trinkets at weekend craft fairs. They didn't know I'd already built an empire and named it after something they once mocked. Clay. While I was quietly scaling something real, Nathan was crashing. His third startup, a peptide-based skincare line called BioHe, was under FDA investigation. Unverified compounds. Vague claims. Too much PR and not enough science. His investors were pulling out. Lawsuits were circling. He tried to pitch to a fund called Clayroot Ventures. What he didn't know was I owned it, through a shell company. The rejection letter was clinical, professional, intraseable. But final? He never knew it was me. Not until last week. And even now, after all of it, no one had said the words, not out loud. No, sorry. We underestimated you. No, we were wrong. Just carefully worded texts from my parents, sprinkled with words like talk and understand as if I was the one who'd been unclear. They still didn't get it. They still thought their doubt made me stronger, that their pressure shaped me, as if their neglect was a test I passed, instead of a wound I had to learn how to live with. But the truth, I stopped succeeding the moment I stopped listening to them. Everything they thought was protecting me was actually keeping me small. The truth has a funny way of surfacing, especially when the people who ignored you try to claim you once you're visible. It started with a LinkedIn post. Emma, my sister-in-law. Nathan's wife uploaded a photo of me at the Met exhibition. The caption read, "So proud of my brilliant sister-in-law Ellie Tran for redefining art and tech. A trailblazer for women in design and innovation?" She tagged me. Of course. She did. I said nothing. I didn't like it. Didn't share it. Didn't even comment. I let it sit there cold. Shallow. And very telling. But the internet. It remembers. A Fast Company journalist dug up a panel recording from 3 years ago. Nathan, in a blazer too expensive for his maturity, had dismissed ceramic artists as influencers with aprons. The journalist included a screenshot of that moment. And then, beneath it, a photo of him now standing proudly next to one of my sculptures. The caption said it all. The brother who once laughed at mud now applauds the muse. The post went viral. And just like that, my family, who'd kept me in the shadows, was suddenly caught in the light. He walked into my studio like he still owned the air around him. Same casual swagger. Same slightly too confident smile. The only thing different was the room this time. It belonged to me. William Harrison. The man who once poured me a glass of Malbec and told me I was just going through a quarter-life crisis. The man who, when I told him I was leaving Goldman for ceramics, laughed. Pottery. Seriously. It had been almost 4 years. But he hadn't changed. Ellie, he said, stepping over a drying rack like it was debris. You look successful. I didn't stand up. I was sealing the base of a sculpture, one of the centerpiece works for the MoMA show. My hands were covered in clay. And I liked that. I look the same. I replied. You just never saw clearly. He chuckled. Come on. Don't be like that. I'm actually here about business. Of course he was. He launched into a pitch blockchain logistics. Inventory AI. Buzzwords lined up like soldiers. Tech dressing itself up as meaning, I've got the infrastructure. He said. You've got reach now. Ferretti. The Met? This could be something big. I wiped my hands, stood slowly. William, I said, calm as fire. Do you realize I own the fund that rejected your startup 3 months ago? He blinked. What Clayroot Ventures? I continued. That wasn't a hedge fund. I bought it. Quietly. His mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't stop. I know about the unpaid contractors. The SEC warning. The NDA your ex-intern filed. And then, like slicing open old wounds. Also, that thing you said, remember, tech is a man's world. Darling, stick to consulting where they appreciate diversity hires. His face drained. I turned to the intercom. Maya, please escort Mr. Harrison out and update the guest list protocol. As security let him out, he muttered something about burning bridges. Funny, I wasn't burning anything. I'd already built my own. The envelope was missing. No stamp. No sender. Just a folded piece of parchment tucked behind the gate latch. I knew the handwriting before I touched it. My father's. It wasn't long. Just a few lines, but they didn't feel rehearsed. They felt Rav, Ellie. I've been reading the articles, watching the interviews. You've built something I don't understand, but I want to. There's a photo in my office, you at age 9, holding up a lump of clay like it was treasure. We laughed that day, but you didn't. I think that's the moment I stopped seeing what you saw. Let me try again. I read it once, then again. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't pretend things hadn't happened. It simply asked, can I start over? And honestly, I didn't know the answer yet. Because forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a kiln low heat. Slow fire. No shortcuts. But maybe they were beginning to feel the heat. Maybe they were learning I was never the one cracking under pressure. They were. He looked different this time. No tea. No briefcase polished to a shine. Just dark jeans. An old leather case. And that awkward, almost boyish expression I'd never seen on him before. The receptionist whispered, he's been coming by every morning for the past 3 days. I checked the security feed. There he was, my father, sitting quietly in the lobby, clutching the handle of a weathered case, like it was something precious. I nodded. Send him up. When he entered my private office, he paused at the threshold like he wasn't sure if he belonged. His eyes scanned the space. The shelves of raw ceramics, the sketches on the whiteboard, the faint smell of glaze and ambition. You've built quite a fortress, he said. It's not a fortress, I replied. It's a workspace. He gave a slow nod. Still feels like a monument. I gestured to the chair across from me. He sat, upright but fidgeting. Then, silence. Not uncomfortable. Not sharp. Just quiet. The kind that finally makes room for things that were never said. I've been thinking about your 5th grade science fair, he said. You built a neural net to predict weather patterns. Everyone else had volcanoes made from baking soda. You had algorithms. He gave a breathless chuckle. I had a board meeting that day. Your mom filmed it. I never watched. I said nothing. He opened the case. Inside, old project proposals, printed articles, patents filed under my name, even screenshots from my website. I've spent the last 3 weeks trying to understand what I missed. He looked up. It was like piecing together a puzzle I never knew existed. Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because he was finally doing something I'd begged him to do for years. Sit with the truth, without trying to fix it. I didn't come here to ask for a favor, he said. Not even forgiveness. He paused. I just wanted to know how you did it. How you turned silence into strength. They arrived at exactly 7:00 p.m. No chauffeur. No designer furs. Just my family, slightly overdressed. Slightly unsure. Standing in the doorway of the place they once dismissed as a hobby. I watched them step inside. My mother looked around first. Her heels tapped gently against the concrete floor. Slower than usual, like the space itself made her walk softer. Her eyes landed on the installation wall. A current of porcelain petals, floating across brick-like breath. She didn't ask what it meant. She didn't critique. She whispered. More to herself than to me. You made this. I nodded. Every petal, every glaze, every cut. My father stood a few steps behind her, hands respectfully folded, letting the silence do the speaking. I led them farther in. There, on the far wall, was the centerpiece, a towering sculptural piece titled Inheritance. 3 panels, each made from different types of clay Vietnamese red earth, riverbank silt, and Japanese porcelain fused together, imperfect and powerful. Below it, a plaque. Some roots need air before they grow. The docent began the tour. But this wasn't for the public. This was for them. Not for applause, but for understanding. I watched them take it in the work. The warmth. The meaning they hadn't known how to ask about. This was never about vengeance. It was about visibility. Not proving I was right, just showing that I was whole all along. At 8:30 p.m., I stood in front of Inheritance, the centerpiece wall that now held more than just clay. It held history, conflict, forgiveness in slow-burning form. My family was gathered across the room, not fidgeting, not checking phones, just present. I looked at them, and then at everyone else. Designers, curators, collectors, some with press passes, others with curiosity in their eyes. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need a stage. I was told I walked away from my future. I began, but I didn't. I walked toward it. It wasn't neat. It wasn't quiet. It was messy, uncertain, glazed in fire and doubt. But in building that future, I continued. I learned something. I paused, turned toward my family. You can't force people to understand your vision. You can only keep building it until it stands tall enough for them to see. I raised my glass. Not for a toast, but for a moment. To anyone who was ever told they were wasting their potential. To anyone who had to prove that success was never about applause, but about substance. The room didn't erupt in cheers. It didn't need to. It breathed. And for the first time, I felt seen not for what I left behind, but for what I became. If this story made you pause, even just for a moment, to think, to feel, to remember a version of yourself that didn't fit the mold, then thank you for staying, for listening all the way through. This is what Silent Revenge is about. Not shouting, not proving, just choosing to become quietly, but completely. If you'd like to walk with us a little further, subscribe gently, like closing a journal, not slamming a door, and maybe leave a comment. Where are you listening from? What part of this story echoed something in you? Until next time, stay steady, stay soft, and never shrink yourself to fit a frame that was never made for you.